Okay. All right. Let me. I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Cool. Good morning, everybody. So, a couple of things about the session today. Please use emojis. So, there's these little emoji buttons at the bottom. And when presenting on a webinar and everybody's muted, it feels like you're talking in a empty hall, and it's quite scary. So if you like something that's said, give a thumbs up. If you laugh at a corny joke, click on the laughy sign. Please remain muted. We will stop at the end of each of the chapters to allow for questions. Just type in your question in the chat in the text box on the right hand side. Angela will then read them out loud. So while we're presenting, we will be answering questions because we want to make this as interactive as possible. We've got we're going to do a little bit of a survey at the start. Our license is limited to 15. I think there's about 80 people on the call. So first 50 that can get in will be able to leave a vote. And we will record the session and the deck will be sent to you. We usually email it out 1 or 2 days after the session. So just have a look at it on your mailbox. Cool. Angela, did I cover everything?
Yep, sounds like it. I think we're good.
Cool. Right, so I'll do the agenda and then introduce the speakers. So the agenda today is Google Analytics for what works and what needs lots of work. So we're going to talk about that. I've spoken to some of the people that's joined, like some of the things that they've encountered. Then GA4, how to set up attribution and funnel reports, like how does the more complicated stuff work. Then, if you're really annoyed with GA4, we are reviewing some Google Analytics for alternatives as well. And we also have on the call, and we're going to show you Mixpanel that they know extensively, and also Microsoft Clarity and Matomo. And then lastly, so there's a lot of marketing analytics tools in the field, and we're just going to share some of the ones that we've seen work, just to get a sense of like what's happening out there. Cool. So let's start. So I'll introduce the speaker. So first, Elena. So she's got 12 years experience. I've worked with her for the last couple of years. She's very strong in content, social media, and digital strategy. You can read the rest. I think the reason why we asked Elena to present is we wanted to show Google. So we believe Google Analytics 4 was built by analysts or developers for developers and analysts. And the irony is that it wasn't built for marketing people. So we've decided, Elena is a marketing person, so she's going to give you a view on Google Analytics 4 now to use it. And then we've got Franco, who's the technical guy. So he's got 8+ years experience. He was at Jellyfish. So he's very good at Google Analytics 4. So he's going to then go into the more technical stuff. So we've got time for marketing people and we've got time for technical people as well. Okay. All right. So let's start with a quick survey because these things are always fun. So what I would like you to do is take out your phone and please take a snapshot of that QR code and then just give us an answer in terms of what does Google Analytics 4 provide for you. So please scan the QR code and then in the real time we'll get the results back. So if you don't know what these things mean, so campaign metrics is my Facebook working, is my Google Ads working? You can select more than one as well. Conversion and ROI metrics, like are you tracking leads inside Google Analytics? The third one is user engagement on your website. So what are they clicking, where are they going, what do they like, what do they hate? Offline sales and customer LTV is if you connect your CRM system and you upload data from your CRM system into Google Analytics 4, you get offline sales and your customer lifetime value. Or it just sucks. You can choose. So just give us a few moments on that. So we can get 50 people in. So I assume we're on 35 now. There we go. Somebody's crying already. Oh my god, it can't be. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. Oh, there's more crying. Okay. Let's see. Let's give it a little bit more time. Okay, we've had 40 votes, 10 more votes. I'll give it another 30 seconds. Okay. It looks like from the results that most people are getting to grips with the basics in terms of campaign metrics, conversion metrics, user engagement, and some of you are actually already linked your CRM data to Google Analytics 4. Okay, thanks. This was quite interesting. We'll share these results with you as well. Cool. Next question. Do you use any of the following tools? Google Analytics 4, Microsoft Clarity, Google Data Studio, Power BI. Do you use any CRM system or do you use Google BigQuery? Let's see. Ooh, okay. Let's see, somebody is 6 people crying again. No. Go. More crying, more laughing, more crying. Oh god, this is very polarizing. Okay, so Google Analytics. It looks like there's some people on this call that's still not on Google Analytics 4. That is very interesting. Okay, we've had 34 votes. We'll give it another 15 seconds. Okay, so so most people are using Google Analytics 4. About 80% is already on it. 4 people are on Microsoft Clarity. That's very interesting. We've got some cool slides on that. Google Data Studio, half of the people are using that. Power BI is half of that. That's a Microsoft product. A lot of big corporates are Microsoft clients, so that's not surprising. And then half of the people are using CRM, and then only 6 people are using BigQuery, which is very interesting. So some of the people that's using Data Studio may be hitting quota errors. I don't know if you've hit that issue. Okay, last question. My organization understands the value of good marketing data and analytics. Just give us a score there. Strongly agree. Wow, okay, there we go. Strongly agree. Strongly agree. Ooh, this looks like this is going to be quite a polarizing. No, it looks like strongly agree is like it's winning. It's like completely and utterly dominating. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, it looks like most of the people here understand. So the business does understand the value of it. Okay, that's great. Okay, that's it. That's the end of this one. Let me go back. So I'm going to hand it over to Elena now. Elena, take it away.
Thanks, Feli. I'm just going to bring up my screen. Give me 2 seconds. Okay. Great. So morning, everyone. As Ferdy mentioned, I come from a marketing side of things. So GA4 was quite a challenge to get my head around, going from Universal Analytics to GA4. And when you log into Google Analytics, Google throws these red banners and as a non-technical person, you just kind of overwhelmed by all the warning signs and the links to read articles. But ultimately, it's just one of those things where the analytics has evolved and has gone from UA to GA4. And I think with anything new and any new tech, it takes time. And I used it for the first time probably in December on a project, and it was the most painful experience. And we had to get an experienced analytics guy to help pull the reports, and it was just painful. So I understand the crying emojis, but I do think it's gotten a little bit better. So we'll go through that. I just had a look at some user sentiment online. And this is what people were saying this month. Is UA ever going to be turned off? Google loves to prolong their deadlines and make people feel anxious and panicked, and then the tools kind of stay. But yeah, it's just interesting to see that, and this was one of the comments when the call started was reporting is not accurate. Are the metrics accurate? The interface is just not. It's not an easy user experience. You can see the last one on the bottom right hand side. It's terrible. It just shows some useless data with charts and stuff. And I think, analytics and data is so important and vital to any area of any business. So, people rely on a tool like Google Analytics to be able to show the value of work being done and how it impacts any ROI. So why did Google change it? So it now GA4 collects both website and app data into one place, which previously wasn't being done. What's quite nice is it's event-based instead of session-based, so it's covering more types of events. It now includes privacy controls, such as cookieless measurement, which is what Google's driving for a cookieless future, which should probably be implemented next year, something that's also been delayed for ages, and behavior and conversion modeling. You've now got integration with media platforms, predictive capabilities, and you'll see I'll show in the reports how it does that. It probably needs a lot more work, but they're starting to do that, as well as Google BigQuery integration. So the benefits are there, but the interface is not intuitive. And like Ferdy said, it's been created for developers by developers. As a marketer, all you want to be able to do is you want to go in there, see how your platforms are performing to be able to show value to the business. And it's such wasted time to just sit and try and figure out what to do, how to build these reports. The privacy settings limits marketers to have a wider view of their audience. And obviously with GDPR legislation, this is a trend we need to get used to. So this is why they're implementing that. Focus on bigger advertisers to make it work, as is always the case, especially with Google. There's a lack of historical data, so you can only see back up to 14 months, which I think could be an issue when you do want to see a longer view historically. And ultimately, monopoly power is at play. It's Google, so that's what you're dealing with. So I'm going to hand over quickly to Francois, who's going to talk through some of the technical issues.
Awesome, thanks, Elena. Yeah, so just quickly touching on some of the technical issues we've seen with GA4 and that we've heard from clients as well. Some of the main things. So we've had some issues with offline uploads, simply not working. They were working previously. We have used them, but then we previously tried to upload some offline conversions, and they just simply weren't working. I started chatting to Google about why that could be, and I think they're still looking into this issue, and they said it was an internal issue. So if you've been having issues with offline upload, those are one of the things. Then when it comes to custom reports, I think Elena touched on this, that limitation on the date range and how far back you can go within GA4. Some clients really just struggling with that because, previously you relied so much on GA and creating reports within GA and looking back at historical data, doing your comparisons, etc. But now, it's a bit harder to do that. So you have to start looking at things like exporting your data to BigQuery and visualizing in Looker Studio, etc. So yeah, that's one of the things. And then numbers between reports. So this is quite a simple thing, but something that people have a lot of frustration with is when you move between different reports within GA4, you do see different numbers for what seems like the exact same metric or dimension, but they're slightly different. So a lot of questions are like, okay, when I look at users in this report and then when I go to this report and I look at users as well, it's different. And why is that? And it's not obvious when you look at it. because it might just be a difference between active users and total users, but it's kind of named the same, so you get confused with that. So yeah, that's obviously not a great thing. And then difference between reporting between GA3 and GA4. I mean, obviously there's a lot of differences there, and it's currently just growing pains understanding GA4 and why it's different to GA3, and then kind of just wrapping your head around that, especially when it comes to your attribution. GA4 is data-driven attribution by default. So already it's going to be attributing to different channels and various other things. It's going to attribute slightly differently than GA3. So that's obviously, like I say, growing pains, understanding what's the difference, why is it different, and how can we utilize GA4 data. So yeah, this is just some of the technical things.
Cool, thanks. Okay, so I'm just going to go into some of the basic reports. So just looking at user acquisition versus traffic acquisition, which are two reports you can pull. And there's user acquisition attributes that first traffic source if an event has occurred, which is really valuable. And then your traffic acquisition is general users to the site. So this is just, you can see here on the left-hand side, this is how you'll toggle through the, excuse me, the different areas of the reporting. So looking a little bit similar to the UA, but a lot more here. So you've got user acquisition, and it'll show you that kind of generic overview of, which channels are driving that. You can add filters. So when I mentioned that report I was pulling earlier in the year, you couldn't do this. You can now add filters and a comparison, which I think is really valuable. So you can look at adding those criteria to be able to pull into what, if you're looking at specific channels or specific sources, how you can sit and compare that. This is a tool that is being developed. I think GA4 was released obviously before it was kind of complete from a dev perspective, so they're still making updates to it. And I think, hopefully the end goal, it will work well. But I think there's still a lot of teething issues. But something like this is really valuable, where you can add comparison and filters. And then this is just looking at the basic traffic acquisition, which sits under here. So similar from a UA perspective in terms of looking at that. And then if we go into engagement, so you've got different engagement reports you can look at, overview, events, and Francois will talk a lot more into the event side of thing, conversions, and then here you can see pages and screens. So you can see the specific pages where you're getting views, users, average engagement, and then event count. So events is a big feature of GA4, which comes through in all the reporting. So really nice to be able to see that, because obviously you want to see what users are taking action on your pages, and what your objectives have been when driving to your channels. And then just to show you on the left-hand side here, I'm just going to jump back quickly. But here there's an Explore tab, and that's really nice reports that they've added. A little bit kind of complicated to start navigating, because there's a lot of different nodes and segments to add, but you can build path exploration. And I think this is really valuable, is that you want to see the journey your users go on. So, if you start with a starting point, so a certain event, and you can start with, example, a session. So someone visiting the page, you can then measure to see what journeys they've gone on, and where the drop-offs are, which is really valuable to see. And you can build these out, and they just call them these tree journeys. And you can keep drilling into them to see those journeys, and to go, well, if someone's starting here and they end up here, where did we want them to go, and why is there such a big drop off? And maybe there's a UX element that comes into play, or a messaging or comms on the site, and maybe that call to action is not strong enough. But this is really nice to play around with. But it is, again, goes back to what do you want to achieve, and what are you looking at driving? Because I think in all these reports, there's a lot of options to add. and kind of where I showed you the comparison and filter as well as this, it's going, you just need to have a clear view of what exactly you want to measure. Otherwise, you'll get lost in a rabbit hole here.
Eleanor, just go back. So is this one of the standard reports? If you go under Explore, if you click on Explore, Path Exploration, this will load.
Yes.
Okay.
But then you build it
Okay.
based on what you want to look at.
So underneath that step +1, I think you can change it from title screen to event. So I think the default is event, or do you have to? So like just go a little bit up, just under step 1 on the right hand side. No, it's okay. Never mind. Continue.
Okay.
Just go on.
Okay. And then advertising. So I don't think they've fleshed this out. This is quite limited in terms of what you can see here. But when I mentioned some of the changes, it is to integrate your advertising to what's going on here. So here you can see which channels drove the most conversion. I mentioned previously how they going to start driving that predictive results, and you can see there's some insights here, which is quite nice. So you can see it's a new feature. This should hopefully be expanded on, and then just relevant touch points. So it's quite basic, I think, at this point, but I think this is something they will expand on. Another one is conversion paths. So again, looking at early touch points, mid touch points, and late touch points, which again is also quite nice to see. So I think just going, there's a lot to work through in terms of what's available, and it's just to go, what exactly are you trying to achieve before it just can become this big spaghetti ball of everything, and it becomes very overwhelming. So yeah. And that's me. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to hand over to Francois. Are there any questions so far?
Jane just wanted to see the behavioral flow, but you've shown that. So that's all good.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you, Elena. Yeah, I think the question there from Jane was how to find the behavior flow.
Thomas has just raised his hand.
Yeah, Thomas, do you want to go?
Thomas, do you want to have a question?
Thanks, Francois. Yeah, so with regards to those behavioral flow reports, we find kind of quite a strange behavior of not being able to co-collaborate. So like if one person creates a report, people can view it, but they can't edit it. I don't know if that's just us being dumb, or that's the general experience, and if there's a way to do a better sort of, you obviously want a standard report that can be collaborated on, i.e. changing the date range, or even just something as simple as that.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point you raised there, and that's you're definitely not being dumb. So you can't, when you share a report within GA4, the person who views it can only view it; they can't edit it, and they actually have to make a copy of it to view it. So that kind of, I guess, defeats the purpose there, right? Because then they're creating a separate report. You can't collaborate. So that is a bit of a That's definitely. Collaboration is obviously quite useful, and you guys are needing that. But I think with GA4, it's definitely it's not ideal for that.
Okay, so you just got to work around in terms of your naming convention, just to know that this might be a copy, but this person owns it, so they can play around with it for their own purpose, whatever they. And
exactly, yeah. So it's more like you create a report and you share it with somebody. If they make a copy, if I'm not mistaken, it's only visible to them. Whatever report you create, obviously, it's only visible to you. Once you share it, then everybody can see it, but they can only copy it. Yeah. So yeah.
Understood.
So no, it makes sense that if you use some kind of naming convention, that will obviously help you to manage that. Awesome. And then just back to the behavior flow. Yeah. So for me personally, behavior flow reports are not. It's definitely not very easy to understand. You can kind of rack your brain a bit on that, because you can build this funnel and then you understand what you're looking at. And when you come the next day, you look at it again and it doesn't make quite sense. And then you have to kind of like piece together how you built it, because there could be like small filters and things that you can apply that can just get confusing. But yeah, if you obviously name things and maybe, like Thomas also mentioned, just naming conventions can help you to manage that better. But yeah, it's not the easiest thing to use. Yeah. Cool. Just in terms of advanced reports, really just looking at some of the slightly more advanced things. I won't be going into a lot of detail, but yeah, so I'll just look at an overview. So when it comes to events, this is obviously where you see your events within GA4. You have this section where you can modify and create new events. And you have some that are tracked by default. There's actually quite a few events that are tracked by default. And also just to mention that GA4 is event-based. Everything is events, and that's where it starts. Obviously, you just still have things like your sessions, what happens within a session, but it's largely event-based. It's looking at what happened on the site. So you have like page views is an event. Any click on anything is an event. And then obviously you can set up your custom events, which is really most people would have to set up some custom events to get greater insights from their website. To understand, like if somebody clicks on a button, which button did they click on, for example? If they submit a form, which form was that? Or what stage of the form did they get to, and things like that. So that would be here. Obviously from here, you can also mark things as a conversion. As you can see, this grayed out portion here, you can mark that as a conversion, and then you can see that in your conversions tab, and obviously do some analysis on that. When it comes to setting up events, you really have two options. You can, sorry, just give me 1 second. Cool. So joys of working from home, your dogs always bother you in meetings. Anyway, so when you set up events, you can set them up in GA4 in the platform. So really this is I would say, it's not simple, but if you don't want to use Google Tag Manager, which is I'll touch on next, you can configure events. So if I go to the next slide, you can click create event, and then from there you can use existing events and then to build other events. So for example, in this example here, you already have a custom event called large. Sorry, no, actually that's the title of this new conversion. And then you see the event name there equals purchase. So you already have the purchase event set up, but then you add a parameter to say if the value of that purchase is more than 60, then that is a large purchase. So that would then fire a new event. So you've essentially created a new event. You can do the same thing with your page views. So you can say, obviously, page views is a default event that is tracked when you implement GA4 by default. And so you can say, if there was a page view, but the page path, so in the parameters, you'll say if the page path was X, then fire an event. And that event could be, say, something simple like a thank you page, and that could be your conversion, if you want to set it up like that. So there's a few options you can play around there. Then, of course, you have Google Tag Manager, which is definitely more advanced and technical if you want to use this. In most cases, you would need somebody that knows how to use GTM. But obviously, from here, you can set up pretty much any tag that you want on the website. Obviously, the Google tags are readily available because those are obviously it's a Google product. But you do have a lot of other tags that's also there by default. And if you can't find the tag that you need, you can also go to the templates. There's templates that people have created, like the community have created, that you can use, like the Facebook tag, for example. You can go and get that as a template, and then you can use that in GTM. But stopping myself from going into too much detail there. You also have your custom reports. So Elena touched a bit on that. And if I just quickly go over to GA here, just looking at Google Merchants Shop, it's a demo account that you can use if you want to play around with GA4 and see what kind of reports you can create, especially if you don't have, say, like currently in your account, but you want to see what that would look like. You can use the demo account. Yeah, and then you have some default reports that you can create. Elena touched on the path exploration. So from here, you can just click on this one and it'll create a default one for you. And then you can start playing around with that. In terms of the custom reports, it takes some getting used to, but it's not too complicated. You have your dimensions and metrics. So that's obviously your two main things. And then you have segments that you can then kind of separate what you're currently seeing, separate that into smaller segments that you want to analyze. So for example, you have something like your funnel exploration. You can look at, here we're looking at something like session start or purchase. And then we have, that's the metrics. Sorry, so yeah, you build your steps, and then you have your metrics, users, completion rate, and you have your dimensions here, traffic, mobile traffic, and that's broken down by segments. So yeah, lots you can do here as well, but you basically just have dimensions, metrics, you add those. But yeah, it's kind of, you have to play around with it a bit to understand it fully, but yeah, it does take a little bit of time there. So then just going one step back, and then of course you can create multiple reports, and also within the same report you can create multiple tabs within one report. So that's also quite nice if you want to have like a report that you share with other people. You can have standardized reports. If you want to look at a certain part of your data in a certain way, often you can have standardized reports and share that with other people. Yeah, so that's the custom reports. And then just quickly touching on the attribution. So happy to take some questions at the end of this. I won't go into a lot of detail, but basically GA4 is by default data-driven attribution. So that's how it attributes your conversions or certain events to different things like your channels, devices, geographical locations. That's how it uses data-driven attribution to decide how to assign credit. And again, without going into too much detail, it's data-driven really looks at, it's obviously a model that assigns value based on the probability of certain touch points adding to somebody converting. So what's the probability it looks at, say, if there's a certain user journey, they came through 4 touch points, how does each one of those touch points increase the probability? And then based on that probability, it will assign the credit. So yeah, I'll stop there. But it's the default attribution model. Then in terms of e-commerce, obviously, this is also a huge part of why we would use GA4, if you have an e-commerce website. I'd say the reports in GA4 is very useful, just as it was in GA3. There's some new reports that you can look at, but I mean, nothing extremely different. Again, it just takes a little bit of getting used to, but you have your standard things like items viewed, add to cart, item purchased, item revenue. But yeah, you can obviously dig into a lot there as well. Ferdy, do you have anything to comment?
No, you can, I'm talking on the next slide, so you can continue.
Okay, cool. Sorry. Yeah, so again, not going into too much detail there, but if you have specific questions on this, I'm very happy to answer. Yeah, and then Ferdy, go ahead.
So any questions around the advanced reports at the moment?
Yeah, so Ferdy, just a question which I've discussed with you. Is this a good time to ask Francois about it? In terms of, so on web, for all of our data-driven reports, works 100%, for any event that fires, but anything we're passing back via measurement protocol using the GA client ID isn't getting attributed to the first user source or any source. It's all being attributed to direct. And we can't figure it out. We've got some help from Google, but they're not sure how to do it. If you have any insights, Francois.
Awesome. Yeah, so measurement protocol, first of all, yeah, I understand if you're struggling with Google, getting support from them, because it's the person you talk to is not always that technically skilled, especially when it comes to measurement protocol. There's not a lot of people who by default, let's say, understand that. But if it's not getting attributed to the right channels, it's probably just a case of looking at how that measurement protocol is set up. So the string that's I've had some experience with measurement protocol, but I'm also not extremely advanced with it. But I know you might just have to look at that that call that's being made with that string that you've created, and it might just be a lack of having the correct parameter to assign to the right channel. So therefore, it just goes to default. So I see a thumbs up from Sheldon there. So he's my backup technical. So yeah, it would just be a case of looking at how that measurement protocol has been set up, and are there some missing parts of that that's necessary. So it's just it'll just be a debugging kind of exercise, I'd say. So it's hard to say without looking at it.
So Rory, I think the answer is I'll get you in contact with Sheldon, and we can have a look at it if you want.
Okay, cool.
Just in terms of this webinar, so we've got an hour. So this stuff, we from past experiences, we've realized that a lot of the topics actually needs an hour to unpack. Like just the explore reports needs an hour, frankly. So we've gone through some of the stuff, but it needs more time. So what we've decided to do is to host workshops. So we've got 2 workshops available. The one is GA4 reports. So this is an intermediate level workshop where we basically show you how to set up and use the conversion reports and the campaign reports that Elena showed you, and how to build some custom ones in Explore. So we're doing that on Thursday. So we've got 10 spots available. The sessions are complimentary. The homework is you need user access to your own account. So Angela's just shared a form link on there. So just click on that if you want to register for that session. And then we have a more advanced session as well, is how to build a dashboard workshop. It's almost like how to build a bear workshop. So this is a little bit more advanced. So this is where we're going to talk about Google Analytics 4's limitations. So like what can you do and not. And then we're going to help you build a Looker dashboard. So so at the end of the session, you should have at least a few graphs and a basic understanding of how to build the stuff. If you are interested in BigQuery, join that session as well, because depending on the cohort of people that join, we might talk about BigQuery as well, but it adds another level of complexity. So anyway, so if you're interested, just click on the link and join. Cool. Franco, back to you.
Awesome. And then I see there's a question. I'll take it now before I go on. So Thomas asking about how do you add Google Merchant Shop properly? Thomas, do you mind just clarifying that question? And I can try and answer.
Sure. No, I mean, obviously being able to access a demo account can be really helpful because you can see what reports are already existing, etc. And I just don't know how to add that demo account as a property onto my GA4 Google Analytics profile.
Yeah, so that's actually quite simple. You would just have to, I can also try and send a link after, but you can just Google GA4 demo account. And then there's like an article that explains a few things, but then within the articles, you'll see there's links, hyperlinks to add. I think there's 2 different accounts that you can add. So once you click on those links, it'll then add that to your GA account. And then, so you just have to find that article. You'll see it's not very obvious, but it's there within that article. Awesome. Cool. Then just looking at some alternatives. So these alternatives we've experienced and kind of looked at in the past few months. And I'll just give a brief overview of what are some of the interesting things about them and how they could be used. Obviously, this is not an extensive list. There's a lot of tools out there, and so I'll just touch on these a little bit. First thing is Microsoft Clarity. This is quite a new thing for everybody, and I think some people have jumped on this and realized the value that this can add. This is not necessarily I would actually not say it's an alternative. It's definitely something that can complement your analytics. And if you haven't seen it, this is what it looks like. It's actually very simple. set up so you have dashboard where you can look at some standardized reports and without having to create any custom reports. Then you have recordings and heat maps. So Microsoft Clarity is largely set around the recordings on the website. So almost every metric that you look at, like you can see here, users, you have live users and distinct users. You can then jump into the recordings for that set. So if you want to look at live users, you can actually look at them as they're currently browsing your website, and it updates like in real time. And then you can look at distinct users and look at those recordings. So it kind of slices the recordings for you and groups the recordings for you in different ways. That's actually very useful and helpful. And then, just in terms of some other things that I found very interesting, there's some, I feel like the graphs and things that it gives you is it's a little bit more intuitive, or a little bit more like they've already gone and done some of the segmentation for you. For example, here you have rage clicks, something, or dead clicks. Something that I've never seen in GA4, and you would kind of expect that analytics would at this point have things like this, that it's a bit more already kind of let's say grouped for you. So in this case you have rage clicks. So what they've done is they've created a kind of a rule that says when somebody rapidly clicks in the same area, then that is called a rage click. So I think that's quite nice. It's kind of already making sense of the data for you a little bit. So instead of you going like, okay, when somebody rapidly clicks in a specific area, that is probably somebody who's, it's a rage click. So they've already defined that for you. I thought that was very interesting. And then, of course, then you can jump into the recordings of that. So you can then see, oh, cool, where are people having those issues? Thomas.
Yeah, just a quick question. Obviously, some of these tools do come with a bit of a performance cost. Do you have a sense, is there all upside, or is there a little bit of downside, i.e. like when you load your website, it's going to take a little bit of a performance hit?
As in, like in terms of your website's performance? Yeah.
I mean, I assume that's where the data is coming from, right? You've got to inject some sort of JavaScript snippet into the site itself.
Yeah, that's correct. The setup is fairly simple. I'm not totally sure about how it affects your website, or how like.
We haven't done tests in terms of the speed cost. So no. Okay. So the setup is easy, but we don't know what the speed cost is at the moment. We do, but in terms of the speed of the setup, we were like, Microsoft is taking this thing very seriously, and what's interesting about the interface, it's changing every 2 weeks. So we think Microsoft has noticed that Google is retreating a little bit from this web analytics space, and they want to occupy it. So just in terms of reputation and technology, I think it should be good, but we haven't checked. Good question.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely always something you must consider with all these tools. How does it actually affect your website? Cool. And then you have dead clicks, and that's defined as users clicked or tapped on a page with no effect. So they tried to click on something and nothing happened. And that to me is already, trying to understand user behavior and user experience on your website. I think Microsoft Clarity is very good for that as well. That user experience refinement. How do you improve your website? Where GA4, it's a lot harder to actually get that information. It's more, GA4 is obviously more about how do we attribute to channels and campaigns, etc. But Clarity, obviously with recordings, help you to understand user journey and user experience on your website. And then also interestingly, JavaScript errors, something again you don't see in GA4, giving you some indications of there might be some technical like website issues like JavaScript errors that you have to look into, and you can again view the recordings for that. So that's really interesting. And then what the recordings look like. So when you go to the recording tab, you can literally view any recording, and you can click play, and it will play the session that the person had, and it will have little ticks there in the timeline of when they interacted or when they clicked on something. I think you can get a lot of value out of just viewing a few recordings. It says a lot more. You can just understand a lot more when you look at somebody actually physically browsing on your website and what they do and where they have issues. So very valuable. And then, of course, heat maps is also, could be a useful thing. And this is just another thing, Microsoft Clarity, and obviously GA4 doesn't have this. So, why not, have this and still, again, with the recordings, obviously recordings is a bit better, but heat maps can still give you an understanding of where people are browsing and what they're viewing and clicking on, and understanding that user experience. And then you also have an area report, which I thought was very interesting. So in terms of a heat map, it will give you areas of where people are clicking and spending time, and highlight those for you and give you a percentage of each as well. So, you can straight away look at it and understand where are people spending more time. And again, that user experience, it helps you to very optimize that user experience.
Okay, Francois, we've got 11 minutes left, so I think just show them this one and then skip Matomo and then go to Mixpanel, and then if there's time left, let's go back to Matomo.
Okay, awesome, cool. So so why Microsoft Clarity? Just kind of summarizing. So they have heat maps, detailed and easy to understand session recordings, flags technical website issues, inside session recording segmentation. So I've already mentioned those. So it has no core measurement module. So, I mean, it's not GA4, it doesn't replace GA4. And then there's limited integrations with third-party tools. But I'd say it has a lot of its own things that we can. Then I'm going to just skip over Matomo. I'll just quickly mention that Matomo is a very close competitor to GA4, and it can definitely replace GA4. I mean, there's obviously some things that it can't do that GA4 can, but it's a strong competitor there. And we'll obviously share the deck, and you can have a look at the pros and cons. Then Mixpanel. So this is an interesting new platform that we've been working with and chatting to the guys who've created this. I'll just quickly briefly look over how it works. So essentially, it's completely customizable. If you imagine that with Mixpanel, you almost build your say GA4 account from scratch. So you build your account and you have boards. So where you can see on the side here your boards, that's comparable to when you go to GA and you look at the side panel here. If I just go to reports, all the things that are already listed there. So you kind of customize what you want that to look like. And each one of those boards is essentially a mini dashboard. You can make it as big as you want to, or as long as you want to. And on each dashboard, you can then have different things that you want to look at. So you can have channels or pages and look at page metrics. And then the pages here, or the boards, like I say, is completely customizable. And then you can build these following kind of graphs and analysis. So insights, you just look at the metrics and kind of visualize that. You have the funnels, flows, and retention analysis. So the funnels and the retention analysis is something that's quite nice to use in this platform that GA4, I'd say, is a bit harder to get that information. But this is what it could look like. So this could be one of your boards where you have the funnel analysis up there. The one nice thing about this panel is that the funnel analysis, you can add more segmentations than with GA4. GA4, I think you can only add up to 4. And I previously showed you this one. So you can have 4 segmentations of segmenting, one step of the funnel. So this is the first step. It's been segmented 4 times, different segments. But with Mixpanel, you can create more than 4 segments. So it just helps to kind of, it's nicer to build reports like that and see more. So then again, just another example of the funnels. Like I said, that's something that I think is really useful. And then the flow. So I would say with Mixpanel, the flow diagram is a lot more easy to understand, and well, just if I compare this to GA4, I would say this is a little bit nicer for me, easy to understand and easy to build as well. Yeah, so in terms of pros and cons, so it's great for apps and web products. So that's kind of the strong points there. Then you have the great funnel and flow analysis, completely customizable user segmentation. You can create segments and I believe export that to segments, and you can obviously use that to market. And then it integrates with your popular CRMs as well. Then the cons are it's a limited free plan. It doesn't replace GA4. And then there's an onboarding required and a bit of a steep learning curve. So just to kind of summarize all of this, I'd say that it doesn't replace GA4, but at this point, it's good to start experimenting with other platforms to kind of safeguard yourself, and just to have another place where you can look at your data and store your data. And I didn't go through Matomo, but Matomo, the one great thing about Matomo for me is that you don't have any limitations on how much data you can store. So you can go back, look at data as far back as you want to. So yeah, quickly through those. But again, if there's any questions, happy to answer those a bit later. And then I think, yeah.
So if anybody on the call has an app or a very interactive website where you do lots of tests and you want to measure flows and things, I think Mixpanel is a very interesting tool. So there is a demo that's taking place on the 8th of August by So just leave your email address in the message box on the right hand side, or go and sign up on LinkedIn. I think it's going to be quite a small session, so it'll be quite intimate and you can find out how it works. Thomas, you have a question.
Yeah, thanks guys. Just on the Matomo, is it similar to Mixpanel in the sense that it's giving you, again, sort of behavior, flow analysis, and high-level metrics like that, or is it complementary?
I think, Francis, just go back to that summary slide and talk through Matomo.
Yeah, so Matomo, I would say it's a little bit above Mixpanel. Not that it's better, but it is, like I say, more comparable to GA4, or more of like a direct competitor. And I'm not sure, I haven't created a lot of custom reports in here, so I'm not sure about the flow reports, but I know you can create funnels. You also have heat maps and session recordings as well, so that's also quite interesting. But I would think of Matomo as kind of a GA3, but not that it's old, but it's kind of simplistic. As you can see here, it's very simple design, and one big thing is that the data retention, there's no expiration of your data. It's all your data, and apparently, as they say, it's 100% accurate. So there's no sampling. That's also a big thing. So compared to GA4. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Brendan, like an interesting thing about Matomo, when we looked at it, it felt a little bit like going back into time. Just like, okay, I really like GA3, and when we browsed Matomo, when we investigated, it felt a little bit like UA3, and like it's, so like we're going back to UA3, but we have to host everything and we have to set up everything ourselves. So we weren't super excited about it, to be frank. But it's a direct competitor to GA4, and I think Mixpanel is complementary to GA4, and especially on the app side. I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Francis, do you want to go? So we've got 3 minutes left. Is there any other questions? So we do have a section on the marketing analytics stacks that people use in general. So we can continue after 11 on that, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody, because I know a lot of people need to drop off, I assume. So any other questions?
Sorry guys, yeah, one more from my side. Just on iOS tracking in GA4 specifically, are there any kind of limitations post iOS 14 for gathering data? Or is that purely from an ad attribution perspective that they've limited kind of data flow?
So I don't think there's any serious limitations on tracking your iOS apps in GA4. Obviously, you do have to consider, the fact that your retention on iOS is less, but I wouldn't say it's a major thing to worry about.
Okay, let me just share the link to the workshop again. Okay, let me take over, Francois. I'll just talk through this last part. So if you need to drop off, all good. Just if you like the session, just in the text box on the right hand side, just write a few nice words. Maybe we'll contact you for testimonial. We appreciate that. It's a lot of work that goes into these sessions. Anyway, all right, so let's go marketing analytics tools. So this is just what we've seen from all the people that we've spoken to. So so there's a lot of pieces of tech out there in terms of marketing analytics and measurement. So we just wanted to share the ones in South Africa, because I think there's a big movement in the international about CDPs and really complicated pieces of tech. But for our market, I think the key thing is what works here in South Africa. So for smaller marketing teams, we've seen that the combination of these tools are quite heavily relied on. So Google Analytics 4, the small marketing teams are still getting used to it. They don't really like it, to be frank, but it is the staple in terms of marketing analytics, and that's complemented with Clarity. We think Clarity is a really interesting product. And in SEMrush, if you're doing SEO, there's some really good reports inside SEMrush, especially around organic and paid data. And then what's key is because of, for example, Brendan mentioned Apple. So next year, a lot of the data is going to go away with third-party cookies going away. So there's a MarTech workshop we did last month if you want to find out more about that. But it's going back to like first-party data. So like, what data do you own? So if you have a Shopify shop, like, look at the data that sits in there. If you have HubSpot, look at the data that sits in there. So this is what we've seen small marketing teams use. For bigger marketing teams, there's a need to start presenting the data from Google Analytics 4 in an easier way. So we've seen a team starting to use Looker Data Studio, and then in certain circumstances, if there's more data involved, then you may pull in BigQuery, because there's the pipe size between Google Analytics 4 and Looker Data Studio is not. There's quota errors that you could, so your dashboard may run into errors if there's too much data. So then sometimes they may consider BigQuery. For the bigger businesses, or the businesses that really want to go on a data journey, and what I mean by data journey is they want to start using the data for more marketing. So using data in their media, in their audiences, or starting to do AI and machine learning and predictive stuff. So this is the ecosystem that we've seen. So Google Analytics 4 plays a big role. It's complemented by data from the CRM systems, so like Dynamics and Salesforce. Those two are quite popular. Zoho CRM is more for smaller, medium to smaller businesses. Then, just because of the native link between Google Analytics 4 and BigQuery, you saw from the data as well in the survey, people use BigQuery. A lot of companies still use Azure because it is a good product, but they are Microsoft shops, so Azure is a big play there. And then in terms of visualization, is still very important, because it's very difficult to see what's actually going on with the data just in Google Analytics 4. So you need some kind of dashboard that can present the data in a usable manner. So we've seen Look at Data Studio, Power BI, again, Microsoft is a big thing, and then Domo come into play as well. So the also represents Domo in South Africa. So that's it. That's sort of what we've seen in the space. Any comments or questions? comments or questions? Cool. Thanks, Alison. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Pips. Thanks, Cobel. Okay, Waldo. Anybody else? Okay, we're going to start wrapping up. Calvin, how was that? Was that okay?
Yeah, thanks, dude. Learned a lot. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for joining.
Cool.
Awesome.
Nice. Thanks, Francois. Thanks, Elena.
Yes, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Don. Johannes, did you find value from this? I know you have high standards.
Yes, Fadi, thanks so much. In the chat, I said that one thing I really appreciate about these sessions is I actually feel less overwhelmed. So yeah, thanks so much for that, guys. Like it really builds confidence.
Awesome.
Cool. Thank you.
Great.
That's a nice compliment. Anybody else want to give Marlies? Come on, you've got your camera on. You can't hide anymore. I've seen you. It's not your AI bot. Not some Angela, I think you can stop the recording.
Thank you.